So, if you're like me, then most of your exposure to Greek mythology has been through pop culture media. For me, namely the Percy Jackson series when I was in elementary school. Not that Percy Jackson series, this Percy Jackson series. Thank you. And of course, just about every modern retelling of each myth takes a lot of its own creative liberties. You don't need to go far to find someone telling you about everything Disney got wrong in the animated Hercules movie. And the thing is, these adaptations aren't wrong. The whole point of folklore is that a story evolves with each new person telling it, recalibrating for their audience. That's what the ancient Greeks and the Romans did, and that's what we're doing right now. But I think most of us can agree that there is a meaningful difference between telling a story simply because it's an entertaining story and telling it because it's part of your religion, your way of understanding the universe. So when people decide they want to learn about Greek mythology, what they probably mean is they want to understand how these stories were told by the people who believed in the gods and ancient heroes that they're about. However, people tend to seek out that information through secondary sources like wikis or people on YouTube retelling the myths in their own way. Hi. And I don't know why people tend to default to secondary sources when the primary sources, works of literature written by ancient Greeks for ancient Greeks, are readily available and they're not just mysterious ancient tomes that only Indiana Jones can decipher. Most of these works are poems and plays. People weren't super keen on writing things down back in the day, so their stories were passed on through performance art. You're probably at least somewhat familiar with the works of Homer, the Iliad and the Odyssey, but an equally important poet from his era is Hesiod, who wrote the Theogony and Works and Days. Those poems contain what I guess you could call the deep lore of Greek mythology. They cover the creation of the universe, the genealogy of the gods, and the broad history of humankind. And unlike Homer's thick boys, Hesiod's works are a lot less of a commitment if you aren't the hugest bookworm in the world, like I am. I haven't even started these yet. And then, of course, there's the Homeric hymns, which weren't composed by Homer. They were just composed around the same time and in a similar style, and for a while people thought they were by Homer. They're not by Homer. Each of them pays tribute to a specific major god and usually covers some of the more important stories about them, like the hymn to Demeter about how she created the winter season after Hades kidnapped her daughter, or the hymn to Dionysus about the time he got kidnapped by pirates and then invented dolphins. These are great sources for learning about the Greek gods as characters, as well as developing more of an understanding of how they were viewed by their actual worshippers. Looking back at the actions of any given god from a modern perspective, it's very easy to see them all as kind of douchebags, but that's absolutely not how the ancient Greeks viewed them. They wouldn't have been worshipped if that was the case. Okay, I can understand if this list of sources is a little confusing and overwhelming, and I can see how that might be why a lot of people choose to just skim Wikipedia articles instead. But if you're looking for a good place to start that covers the gist of the most important myths in a very easy-to-read manner, then the Library by Pseudo Apollodorus has you covered. This book is a compendium put together probably around 300 AD-ish, when the Greek religion was starting to be replaced by Christianity, but still absolutely existed. It bases its summaries of Greek myths from all the primary sources I mentioned before, as well as many, many others, including some that no longer exist. And it doesn't seem to take many big creative liberties, meaning it's very reliable. So I would recommend checking out this bad boy and using it as your base for your understanding of Greek mythology. And then any particular stories that you find interesting, you can go look up earlier sources for further reading. If you want a super handy reference guide, then one website that I do strongly recommend is theoi.com. It's an incredibly useful resource for looking up information on any specific mythological figure or texts, and everything's properly cited, and it even has full public domain translations for just about any primary source completely free. One important thing to keep in mind when you're delving into all of this, though, is that there is no canon. The more you learn, the more you'll see different versions of a myth or events in one myth that contradict something that happens in another myth, and God help you if you try to put together a sensical, linear timeline of events from myth to myth. These are many different stories told by many different people in many different places over many different generations, and it's only later that we dug them all up and decided to put them under the umbrella of Greek mythology. If you were looking for the ancient Greek equivalent of a Bible, then you're going to be very disappointed and have a lot more work ahead of you than you were anticipating. long. But it's very fun work, and I've pretty much only just started my journey into this very interesting subject, so I hope you'll join me. I've got links in the doobly-doo for all of the resources I've mentioned, as well as where you can buy printed copies of all the books that I've been reading. There are affiliate links, by the way, just in case, you want to help out, because I'm a starving animator and I don't have a Patreon or anything. Thank you. Also, if you just love supporting me in general, then maybe you can check out my animated videos on Greek mythology, which are definitely not authentic retellings, but like I said, it's all in the spirit of folklore. I'm keeping an ancient tradition alive. You're welcome.